Hey, what is going on guys, RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of the changes coming for patch 9.23. A lot of these changes have to do with items, also to runes, so we're going to be going over those changes and we're going to be discussing which champions will get influenced by the changes, which will get stronger, which will get weaker, and stuff like that. So with that being said guys, let's get started. So if we begin here by taking a look at some of the AD carry item changes, first up for Zeal, the old Zeal is going to be on the left there, the new one is going to be on the right, and right away you can notice a few different changes. So Brawler Gloves are going to be completely removed from the game. Cloak of Agility is going to be the crit item that now builds into Zeal, and Cloak of Agility is now going to give you 25% crit instead of 20%, so this could actually be very interesting for next patch. We could see some pretty unique build paths on somebody like Yasuo, because technically in next patch you could just build 2 Cloak of Agilities and you could get 100% crit on Yasuo. So what we could see is we could see Yasuo rushing 2 Cloak of Agilities, and then after that he finishes off into a static shiv, then he builds his Infinity Edge. There could be some very interesting build options here for 9.23. What you could also do to get a quick 100% crit is you could just go for a Zeal and then go for Infinity Edge instead of going for like a static shiv or a PD rush. You pretty much always go for either static or PD rush right now on Yasuo, but if you want to hit a very quick 100% crit, then you can now go for that Zeal into Infinity Edge. Now if we take a look at the Zeal completed items, Rapid Fire Cannon here is getting a couple different changes. Same with Static Shiv, they're getting similar changes to where they're changing the energized effects so that they deal more energized damage in the early game, and it's just going to be a flat amount. Actually, it's going to be 120 flat magic damage from your energized attack at all stages of the game instead of 60 scaling up to 140, so going to be much stronger there once you do complete this item in the early stages. Notice there also the completed price of the Zeal items are staying exactly the same. So Zeal in itself got increased in price, but once you actually complete the full item, it's not going to be an increase in price for next patch. Now if we segue on to taking a look at the Stormraiser changes, this is where it gets really interesting because energize effects are now actually going to stack for next patch. So you're going to get bonus energized damage there from the Stormraiser. You're also going to get the bonus energized damage from the Rapid Fire Cannon or the Static Shiv. So you could actually have a lot of burst potential as an AD carry by going for something like a Stormraiser into a Rapid Fire Cannon or a Stormraiser into a Static Shiv. Now a couple different changes here to Stormraiser. The cost is going to be increased by 100 gold, but you're now going to be getting crit back on the item, so you're now getting 25% crit. The energized attack is now going to deal 120 magic damage instead of 50. You are going to be losing the bonus energize effects that the old Stormraiser gave you. So the old Stormraiser, it increased your energizes effects by 35%, so it gave you like more range on your Rapid Fire Cannon and stuff like that. That is now going to be gone from the new Stormraiser. So with the changes here, I do assume that Stormraiser into a Zeal item is going to become a lot more popular now on AD carries for next patch. You're going to hit a very nice 2-item spike there. You're going to have a lot more burst potential with an AD carry or as an AD carry, which is going to be pretty interesting because AD carries, they're more so meant to deal consistent DPS in fights, not deal burst damage. So I feel like that could end up being a bit of an issue, but we will have to see how it ends up rolling out. But overall, I do think this does make the mid-game spikes of most AD carries a lot better. So if we move on to some of the lethality item changes now, there's actually 2 new lethality items being added to the game. The first one here is called Sanguine Blade. So this item is going to give you 50 AD, 15% lifesteal, 18 lethality, and then when you do, or the passive on it is when you do end up catching an opponent out and they're isolated, you end up gaining 50 to 120% attack speed based on level. Now it's going to be interesting to see what the range is on this and how close the enemy has to be to one of their teammates so that this does not activate. If the range is pretty short, I can see this item being very good on a lot of different champions, but if the range is pretty long and you actually have to be very far away, or the opponent that you're jumping on has to be very far away from their teammate in order for you to activate this attack speed, then I don't think it would be the greatest item. But overall, it's probably going to be best on champions like Rengar, Kha'Zix, Nocturne, these champions that tend to catch out opponents when they are isolated or when they are caught out away from their team. This item is definitely not going to be that OP, at least in my mind. It's probably only going to be taken on a select few of those champions that do benefit more from that attack speed. If you're a champion like Zed or Talon, for example, who really doesn't benefit from that bonus attack speed too much, then I just don't see as to why you'd really end up running it. So I don't think it's going to be run on Zed or Talon. It could also be good on some split push top laners. Tryndamere and Jax come to mind as two champions that could end up running it, but we will have to wait and see. I don't think it's going to be that OP, but I do think a few different champions will end up doing pretty well with it. Now for Duskblade, they're kind of changing it into two different items for next patch, or they're moving one of the passives from Duskblade in this patch right now over onto a new item called Umbral Blade. So Umbral Blade is going to give you 50 AD, 10% CDR, 10 lethality. It's only going to cost you 2,400 gold, and the passive on it is going to be the old one from the Duskblade in this patch right now, to where when you walk over a ward, you're going to be able to see the ward and one hit it with your auto attack. So that's now going to be Umbral Blade. The Duskblade in next patch here is going to be pretty much the same from last patch, but it's no longer going to have that effect on it, to where when you walk over a ward, you can clear it and you see wards. It's only going to have the effect to where when you've been unseen for more than 1 second, you are now going to gain that bonus damage on your next auto attack and slow the target. So the new Duskblade is actually going to give you a little bit more AD and a bit more lethality as well. It's still going to be 2,900 gold, so it's going to be a bit more gold there than the Umbral Blade, but the stats that you get from Duskblade and also the bonus damage there on your next auto attack, I just feel like it's going to be the go-to item still on all assassins, the go-to lethality item for them. Umbral Blade just seems like an item that would be perfect for Pyke support because it is cheaper. It also gives you the ability to clear out wards, so I just don't really see the appeal to Umbral Blade. I feel like most champions are still going to want to go for Duskblade, with maybe the exception of Pyke support. Now for Edge of Night, it's getting some pretty interesting changes which I don't really understand too much. The cost is staying exactly the same, but the health is being decreased by 25, the lethality is being decreased by 8, and the passive, it's now going to be like Banshee Shield, so you're no longer going to be able to activate the Edge of Night active there whenever you want to. It's now just going to be like Banshees. You're going to get the shield. If it gets popped, it's going to go on cooldown there. So I just feel like this really reduces the versatility of Edge of Night. You could do some pretty interesting things with the active. You wouldn't always want to activate it before you went into a fight. What you could do sometimes is if the enemy team has somebody like a Karthus on their team, you could wait to activate your Edge of Night until after a fight to block the Karthus ultimate damage. You could just do some pretty unique things with the active on the old Edge of Night there. So I just feel like they're making the item a lot more noob friendly for this coming patch here and reducing the skill it takes to use the item, which I don't really agree with entirely. So moving on to Dorne Shield now, it's getting two different changes for next patch. You're going to be getting more regeneration from the item after taking damage from the opponent, so it's now going to be 40 health over 8 seconds instead of 30 health over 10 seconds, so a bit more regen there. It's also now only going to be 75% effective for ranged champions, so that regen you get only 75% effective for ranged champs, so that does mean that any ranged top laner, if you're looking to take Dorne Shield, if you're playing AD carry and you're in a more difficult matchup down in the bot lane, then it is going to be much more difficult for you now to sustain the laning phase if you are going for Dorne Shield. This does mean as well that it's going to be a buff to melee top laners, so if you're playing a melee tank or just a melee top laner and you're going up against a ranged top laner for next patch, you are now going to have a little bit of an easier time dealing with those ranged top lane picks, and it's going to be more difficult for those ranged top laners to succeed and poke you out in lane. Now support items are getting overhauled for 9.23, so you're no longer going to be able to purchase Ancient Coin. That item is being removed. You're now only going to be able to buy variations of Relic Shield and Spell Thief. So one of the relic items is going to give you more AD and less health. The other relic item is going to give you more health and less AD. And then for the ability power items, for the Spell Thieves items, one is going to end up giving you more AP than health, and the other is going to give you a little bit more health than AP. So depending on what champion you're playing, if you're playing like an AP support and you only want damage, then you would go for the support item that's going to give you more AP than health. If you're playing more of a tankier AP support champion, say you're playing something like a Gragas, then you'd probably go for the one that gives you more health and a little bit less AP. Now, instead of only getting health from your support item, you're actually now going to be able to get attack damage as well. So I'm not too sure how many supports will end up going for this item or this variation. I'd say that Pyke would probably end up going for it for sure, but most supports would probably end up going for the AP health variation instead of the AD health variation, but we'll have to see. I know that Pyke for sure is probably going to be one support that does benefit from these changes the most. The items I have on screen there are going to be the ones that you get when you end up completing the quest for your support items. So you spend 400 gold in the early game on your support item now, and that's all you have to spend on a support item for the rest of the game. You don't have to upgrade by buying the item. You're going to upgrade your item now by completing quests, and you get the bonus stats now by completing those quests. So what this is going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to diverge into other items a little bit quicker. It's going to allow you to pick up an early like Zeke's Convergence on an aggressive melee support. It will allow you to pick up an early Ardent Sensor if you're playing a heal shield support. So it does give supports now a little bit of an earlier power spike for 923. Now for Shurelya's, they're changing the item to where they're removing the AP from it. They're removing just 40 AP from the item, which is actually pretty big. And Amp Tone gives you 20 ability power. It costs 435 gold. So they're basically removing like over 800 gold worth of stats there. And they're only, I don't know if they're compensating enough for that, because what they're doing is they're reducing the cost of the item by 200 gold. They're giving it 50 more AP, 10% heal and shield power, and they're giving it a little bit more base health regen. They are removing the movement speed from the item as well, so I'm just not too sure if this item is really going to be that much better for next patch. I feel like the champions that would run it in this patch right now would actually not benefit from this new Shurelya's here, because a lot of the champions that would run it would actually benefit from the AP. It could be good on certain like tank engage supports now, something like an Alistar or a Taric, who will actually benefit from that extra heal and shield power and actually want the extra health and want that bit more tankiness from the item. I could see it being run on them, but I think overall it's still going to be a pretty niche item, not bought on too many champions. Now, if we move on to some rune changes here, Conqueror is getting overhauled for preseason, so it's basically going to be a completely new rune now, or it's going to be somewhat similar to the old Conqueror, but there's a lot that's going to be changed here. So it's now going to give you it's still going to give you the stacking effect, where when you stack it up, you're going to gain the bonus attack damage there per stack, but you're going to be losing the true damage from the rune now. So it's going to be weaker against tank champions, but you are now going to be gaining 15% damage, or you're going to heal for 15% of the damage you deal to champions once it's fully stacked. So it's basically going to be like the old Fervor. However, you're now going to have that healing effect on it. For ranged champions, you're going to be stacking it up a little bit slower, so you only gain 1 stack per basic attack there. Once you get it up to 10 stacks, that's when you end up getting the bonus healing, and it's actually not going to fall off sooner for ranged champions. So you're still going to have, I'm pretty sure, 8 seconds in between attacks to where you can continue to stack Conquerors. So even though you stack it a little bit slower for ranged champions, I do still think it will be viable on them. So what this means for champions is that it's going to be a buff to tanks. True damage is being removed from Conqueror, so tanks are going to have a much easier time dealing with bruisers for 9.23. It does mean that bruisers into tank matchups will get a little bit weaker as well. Old Fervor users are probably now going to take the rune again, especially somebody like Ezreal, who's getting his keystone removed from the game. So Kleptomancy is being removed, and Ezreal was very good with the old Fervor of battle, so it's basically the same here with the new Conqueror. And because of that, I do think this will now be the go-to keystone on Ezreal. It's probably going to be the go-to keystone on a few different AD carries, but I think Press the Attack is still going to be the better early game rune. It's going to take you a lot longer in the laning phase to stack this up as a ranged champion, because you're only getting 1 stack per basic attack. So that means that it's just going to be a lot less useful than something like Press the Attack. So I think that if you're playing somebody like Lucian and you're in an aggro matchup, then you'd probably still want to run the Press the Attack attack over the Conqueror. The rune that's going to be replacing Kleptomancy will be called Omni Stone, and this rune is going to give you a random keystone that you can use for a certain duration. It's going to give you 40 seconds to use the keystone. If you don't end up using that keystone, then it's going to re-roll it for you, give you another one. It's going to have an 8-second cooldown between using a keystone and getting the next. So I just feel like this is going to be a very RNG rune. Obviously, depending on the champion you're playing, like if you just get a random keystone that doesn't even work for your champion, then technically you don't even have a keystone. I feel like this is only going to be used on like a select few champions. Well, definitely, like this is going to be a rune here where there's going to need to be some experimenting, so it's too early to tell right now as to which champions would really benefit from this new rune for next patch. And this is another one here where I might just make a separate video when 9.23 does go live, where we outline every champion that can do well with it. For presence of mind, they're changing it to where you're now no longer going to get 10% CDR on your ultimate when you get a takedown, and instead you're now going to increase your maximum mana or your maximum energy by 100 for mana up to 500 and by 10 for energy up to 50. So I could see this being a much better rune now on mana reliant champions or on tier stacking champions. So somebody like an Anivia, for example, or even an Ezreal, Cassiopeia, I could see this being better on them. But for ultimate reliant champions that would run it in this patch right now, like the Karthus and the Malphite, more so for the Karthus for sure, because he was a very good presence of mind user there and would benefit a ton from that ultimate reduction. I do think he is going to get hurt a lot more by these changes. For Nimbus Cloak, it's being changed to where after casting a summoner spell, that's now when you gain that bonus movement speed, so it's not going to be after when you use an ultimate. So I think this means that it's going to be weaker on champions who would benefit from using it with their ultimate. So champions like Rakan or Kennen, their ultimates are going to be on much shorter cooldowns than their flashes would, so whenever their ults are up, they would benefit from that bonus movement speed from the Nimbus Cloak. And because you now have to use a summoner spell to proc it, I feel like it's going to be weaker on those champions. Some champions though that wouldn't really be able to use their ultimate and benefit from the bonus movement speed, like I don't know, Malzahar for example, would be better with this new Nimbus Cloak. And then lastly, to round it out here, for Aftershock, it's now going to be a little bit stronger on tank champions. It's going to scale better into the late game, and it's going to be a little bit weaker on champions that just won't be building any armor or magic resist. So if you're playing somebody like that Galio in the mid lane, it's going to be a lot weaker on him. If you're playing a tank champion in the top lane though, like a Maokai for example, it's going to be much better on him. Now for supports, it's going to be pretty interesting because the damage on it actually got increased. The cooldown got decreased as well, from 35 seconds down to 20 seconds. So this could actually be stronger on support champions in easy matchups, because if you're in an easy matchup, having that on a lower cooldown, having the extra damage there will help you all in better in the laning phase. But if you're in a harder matchup as a support champion, then because you're going to be getting less armor and less magic resist from it in the early game, it's going to make your more difficult matchups even harder for next patch. So that's going to be all for the video, guys. That is everything item and rune related that you need to know heading into patch 9.23. So hopefully you did enjoy this video. Hopefully it does help you out. If it did, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you in my next video.